How's it going, all you minties? It is Tuesday, and I am the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. That means it's time for your advanced look at these collected editions coming out from Marvel this week. So, let's go ahead and get started. And a big thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us advanced copies of these books. All of these books are due out in the direct market and book market on March 7th or 8th, depending on where you get your books. Of course, these aren't the only books that are coming out from Marvel this week. We've had two big reprints, Silver Surfer by Mike Allred and Dan Slott, and Spider-Man vs. Venom Omnis. Both are dropping this week. But we're focused on these particular titles. As always, I will leave timestamps in the description of the video so you can jump around in case you're not interested or want any kind of spoilers. Alright, so let's kick it off with the mighty Marvel Masterworks Daredevil. So here we have the latest mighty Marvel Masterworks. This is Daredevil Volume 2, Alone Against the Underworld. So we have the direct market over here, and the standard edition over here. So direct market and the standard edition have different spines, so you can get a better look. And this is the standard edition back and the direct market back. The direct market always telling you that this is a volume number of a limited printing collector's edition. Everything else on the inside is the same. And if you're not familiar with the size of these books, they are digest size, meaning that they are smaller than your trade paperback. So these are the size of single issues, which these are a little bit smaller in trim size. So there's a little bit of a comparison to kind of give you an idea. And my kids were supposed to do this video with me, but instead they said they would read it and do a proper review of it. Right now we're working on the Hulk, and then after that Namor, and then Captain Marvel. Alright, so here we have more of Daredevil by Stan Lee. And of course, during this time, it's John Romita drawing the art, as well as Jack Kirby, Gene Colan stepping in for the last couple of issues. Man, Kazar makes an appearance not just here, but also in the pages of that amazing Spider-Man Epic Collection. This collects issues 12 through 21, and this introduces us to the Gladiator. There's the fight with Ox, the team up with Spider-Man. Because of misunderstandings, as always, heroes are fighting during this time. And this has 216 pages, retailing for $15.99. There's the Gladiator right there. And then the last couple of issues has that wonderful Gene Colan artwork that I've just fallen in love with the owl right there. And I think, yeah, it wasn't until last couple of years that I've started appreciating Colan's art more and more. I'm curious what my kids will think of it. Just one little extra, and this is a house ad right there. And again, $15.99, and we'll do a proper review of this sometime on the channel. Gambit, Thick as Thieves. And this is the latest trade paperback from Chris Claremont. Well, from Marvel Comics, but Chris Claremont. And this one is really interesting because he is writing his co-creation of Gambit. This is a really interesting time. As a matter of fact, you probably see Storm there, a young Ro, and you're probably wondering, why is she a kid? Now, if you haven't read a lot of X-Men, you might be lost. But in order for you to enjoy this, we have to take a look back at some issues that happen around 266, 267, or 265 rather. But mainly his first appearance. And I guess I don't need to tell you a little bit of spoilers about that time. Just in case you haven't read those stories, those are found in the X-Men by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, Omnibus Volume 1, in case you're reading these with Omnis. But this trade paperback, even though it's a story that was written in 2022, takes place during those issues. It doesn't really tell you that ahead of time. I think it's just, it's supposed to be understood. But it is written by Chris Claremont, Sid Cotian doing the art right there. And there you have the colorist and the letterers, and Whilce Portacio drawing the covers. Now, Whilce Portacio also was the one that drew Gambit in his second appearance. So in issue 267. Issue 266, there was a fill-in artist. But by 267, it was Whilce Portacio. Then, of course, the co-creator of Gambit being Jim Lee. So this era is when Gambit and Aurora had met up. Both of them being thieves, both of them having background as thieves. And Aurora being a kid because she got turned into a kid because of a certain character named Nanny that kidnapped her. And that was all the way back in Jim Lee's first issue of Uncanny X-Men. It was just a fill-in issue. It was what was it? Issue 258, I believe, was his first issue. Or no, 248, 248, sorry. Brain these days, I swear. But this collects the Gambit series 1 through 5 from 2022. This book retails for $15.99 and it has 112 pages. It's just a really interesting collection because, well, you're supposed to know a little bit about this time that Gambit and Aurora were together. So it's when she lost her memory. Again, she's a kid. The Shadow King is after her, and he just thinks that she's a thief at first. Of course, they run into other characters like Marissa and Gabriella and, Bounty, and they all play a role in this particular story. There's returning characters from the X-Men past that I don't want to spoil because they were just interesting surprises. Not like, oh, an excellent surprise, just interesting surprises because I didn't think anybody would remember those characters. But this was an interesting read. It was fun. It's Chris Claremont, and while he's not doing the narration, the heavy narration boxes, it is still some Chris Claremont dialogue, and I miss that. I love this era of X-Men. So for him, it's like riding a bike. He just jumps on and tells a story that he probably wanted to tell back then, or maybe the ideas came to him afterwards. It's hard to tell with Chris Claremont. And anytime I've ever interviewed him, he could tell you, yeah, I've had 1,000 ideas, and some of them came to be. And he does. He's a man of many ideas. And maybe this was one of them that he had for back then. Now, the artwork by Kotian is really interesting because it's like a mix of Whilce Portacio's artwork and some newer art. It's a lot sketchier. It feels like Klaus Janson maybe inking some of Whilce Portacio's art. So it kind of fits the tone of the story. Here are some other variant covers, and then Whilce Portacio doing the main covers. I really, really wish, selfishly, that Whilce had drawn it and Scott Williams had inked it. And I pointed at this picture right here because this picture is drawn by Scott Williams, who is, of course, everybody remembers him as being the biggest inker with Jim Lee. Both of them just doing that phenomenal artwork together. I mean, is it a big game changer? Not really. It's kind of hard to write these particular stories for this time because you're going back to something that happened in the 90s. And unless you're a huge Gambit fan, or I guess a stickler for continuity like some of us are, this is going to be like something new and something from the past. And you're going to wonder, did it really change anything? Did these things really happen? And I guess, yeah, they never talked about it. This era, for some reason, nobody ever went back to visit, both when Gambit had just met Storm when she was a little kid. And I always thought that dynamic was really interesting. Now, you saw that some extras are in between issues. There's an afterword all the way in the back. Hey, I was just talking about these issues right here. From Mark Basso, who is the editor of X-Men, talking about how they may not be done with Gambit and Storm's stories. So, said maybe they'll do some more later on. Trials of X, Volume 6. Feels like I just talked about Volume 5. Collecting X Corp number 5, Marauders 24 and 25, X-Force 23 and 24, and Excalibur 24. Now with this one, I know I don't have to say it, but just in case, we're towards the tail end of some of these series that are wrapping up, so maybe just minor spoilers. Beautiful cover right there by Russell Dodderman. This one also printed in the US. And here's X-Corp wrapping up this series with M and Penance and Angel. And it was really nice to see Trinary in here. This is a very unique story that has to do with the funding of Krakoa, how they're a big business now and they just have to go corporate, they have to go public. So there's a board, and of course it's, X characters. But it's just really interesting to read a story like this about business and funding and trading. So throw in X-Men and it's never that easy. Here's another story that's wrapping up, and this is the Marauders era with Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost having this big team up. Characters from the past showing back up, and by now it's Phil Noto drawing the artwork. I believe they have one more issue to wrap up that series. So it is getting really difficult to talk about these books without going heavy into spoiler and even choosing the pictures and pages to show so you can get a little bit of taste of the artwork. It gets a little bit trickier. So let's actually go from Marauders and look at the next issues, and this is X-Force. Now, X-Force is one of these titles that's hit and miss with me. I think a lot of people feel like that, or maybe it's just the way that I think a lot of people do, and it's just me in the minority. And it's basically the treatment of some of the characters that are in here. Particularly issue number 24 makes me think again, is this right? Is this how this character would handle this situation? I don't know. But then again, I've had issues like that in the past before. Whether it was Scott Lobdell writing the stories, Joe Casey writing the stories, Chuck Austin writing the stories. But it doesn't matter who's writing them. Whenever these characters feel like family to you, you take everything they do to heart. You take it as a personal attack when they act out a character. And it's just something that I've had to learn to let go to enjoy the rest of the story. But I feel like I've seen in the comment sections that there's a portrayal of a couple of characters in X-Force that people are really disappointed with. I thought the series started off strong, and then it just kind of went down. Whereas Wolverine has ups and downs, and it's the same creator, Benjamin Percy, that does both series. And the book wraps up with Excalibur, still hanging out in Otherworld, and we have some interesting characters show up through here because again, this is wrapping up this series with issue number 26, I believe, is the final issue. And Marcos Toe and Tini Howard are just really great. This was a series that I thought started really slow, and to me, it picked up. And I hate to say this, but it picked up after X of Swords. And it's basically because it took me a while to learn or get used to her writing style. And I don't know if it feels like that for anyone else or not, but I've always been a big fan of Marcos Toe's artwork. I think it's so good, so solid. Now, all the way in the back is where you're going to find some covers. So you have variant covers back here. And some of these variants have absolutely nothing to do with what's happening inside of the book. Speaking of, there's those Joe Jusko covers right there from the trading cards. These were the Marvel Masterpieces trading cards back in the 90s. And the book has 160 pages, retails for $19.99. And just how the covers are collected in here. And it's spine watching time. So here are all of the spines of the books coming out this week from Marvel. And also a reminder to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And let's continue with the video. Last but certainly not least is the Amazing Spider-Man Epic Collection Volume 4 back to print, The Goblin Lives. And this time around, it is $44.99. So this book here collects Amazing Spider-Man 53 to 67, Spectacular Spider-Man 1 and 2. Now, those were the magazine-sized books. They have nothing to do, well, outside of using the character of Spider-Man, with the Spectacular Spider-Man series that started a few years later. They're ones from 1968. It also collects Marvel Superheroes number 14 and then material from Not Brand Ech number 6 and 11. This book has 496 pages. And again, this copy, or this new printing, retails for $44.99. Oh, man. Now, I own these in Omnibus Edition. That's why I can't compare it to the original printing of the Epic Collection. But here we have Stan Lee and John Romita, and this just solidifies this era of Spider-Man. Both of them are just running on all cylinders, and there's nothing wrong. I love what Steve Ditko did. I mean, the man put Spider-Man on the map. Without Steve Ditko, I don't think Spider-Man would have been the same. But John Romita Jr., I don't know how many times I'm going to do that, so please forgive me. It's because I speak of his son so often. But John Romita just changed the game. Like, the romantic side of Peter Parker. He made a handsome Peter instead of, a scrawny Peter with glasses. And then again, Steve Ditko did get rid of the glasses, but John Romita had a way of drawing Peter Parker a lot different than what Steve Ditko did. So in this era, we still see his relationship with Gwen, and of course that becomes a little bit of a love triangle later on because they reignite this interest with Betty that they had years back. Oh my gosh, it kicks off with this Doctor Octopus story where he moves in. He moves in with Aunt May because she's taking people in because she's got to pay rent, and he becomes one of the porters. We're also introduced to the character of Joe Robertson, and this is Joe Robbie Robertson, who's pretty much a opposite of what J. Jonah Jameson's rantings were. So he is the new city editor, and of course will become a huge part of the Daily Bugle and Peter Parker's life. But this confrontation with Peter and Doc Ock right here, where he finds out that he's boarding over at Aunt May's house, and he's like, "What?" And then they have a fight. This lasts for a few issues, honestly. And there's another character that gets introduced through these pages that plays a big part in Spider-Man's life and in Peter Parker's life, and that is the Captain George Stacy, Gwen's father. He's a new addition to the title, and like I said, will play a bigger part in Peter Parker's life. Here's an issue with Kazar. Actually, there's a couple of issues with Kazar. He has a team up. That's what I meant. Like, wow, Kazar was in this week's Mighty Marvel Masterworks. J. Jonah Jameson has his new Spider Slayer outfit because, the prototype sucked. We have the return of Kingpin, Mary Jane playing more and more of a part in Peter's life. Now, it is very important to note that during this time, Norman Osborn isn't playing with all the cards in his deck. He's kind of forgotten about his alter ego. This is a little hard to do, even with minor spoilers. And I know some people are like, why the hell do you care? These stories are old. Because, just look at my comments. Sometimes people get upset, even though the stories are from 1968, that I may spoil something big from them. So I just play it safe. You want to know more in-depth stuff, I usually let you know, hey, big spoilers coming up. We have Medusa, who had previously appeared in the pages of the Fantastic Four, and this is the first Spectacular Spider-Man issue right here, and it is in black and white, this one by Stan Lee and John Romita. And there's a backup story retelling the origin of Spider-Man back here, the origin of how Peter Parker became Spider-Man. I believe that one is drawn by Bill Everett, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Yeah, Bill Everett drawing that one. Now, the second issue is in color. It starts off a little bit in black and white, but then there's color. We have the return of the Vulture there, the return of Mysterio, with, again, some phenomenal artwork by John Romita. We have the second issue here, and this is why it becomes an important part of Spider-Man, and I'm so glad that it's added in here, because it has a huge story with the Green Goblin, and it's the return of his arch nemesis, the Green Goblin. This is the Marvel Superheroes issue right here. I believe that one was drawn by Ross Andrew. And then the Nod Brand Ech issues. And again, this printing retails for $44.99, and it has 496 pages. And I always like to stress the fact, and let's look at the extras while I talk about this, that when these books come back to print, they don't have the biggest print run, especially with epics. So if you're at all interested in this one, make sure you pick it up within the week or so if you're at all interested in this one. And more of the house ads, including this letter right here that John Romita wrote to Jim Mooney about the hair changes. So there for a while, Mary Jane did have that little bit of a curly hair. And then the cover to the Marvel Masterworks. I love this era. And if you've not read it, if you've been waiting for this reprint, well, then I'm glad I said, maybe pick it up within a week or so, because I hate for you to miss it. It was voted in our most wanted epic reprints, and that poll will be up. I'm going to try to get it up there next week, so keep an eye on the channel. Make sure you subscribe. And yeah, I'm glad that it did. It came back for anybody that missed it. It's just a fun era of Spider-Man and his ever-growing cast of supporting characters. And that's why this one gets the Near Mint Condition seal of approval for this week. I love the stories found in here. And of course, it doesn't hurt to have beautiful artwork by John Romita, but also Bill Everett and Ross Andrew drawing those issues. But that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of each of these books. Let me know in the comments down below which you are picking up. Are you picking up the Mighty Marvel Masterworks for yourself, for kids, for friends' kids, nieces, nephews, whomever? And have you read Gambit? Or is this how you're keeping up with this era of the X-Men and Krakoa? And of course, Amazing Spider-Man. Which way do you collect them? Marvel Masterworks, Epic Collections, Omnibus Editions, trade paperbacks, single issues, or all the above? This was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.